Last question. What are, in your opinion, global competencies? There is a lot of literature around the concept of developing students certain global competencies. And what will be a good world leader, in your opinion? Because at the end of the day, we are trying to foster leaders for the future.
But we can't have everybody be a leader either. I
No,
mean, I
sure,
get so
sure.
many
In
kids
their
coming
own
in
field,
for
in their own
interviews.
fields, yeah.
So many of my students who come in for missions interviews say, "Oh, I want to be a global leader."
Yeah.
And that's all well and good, but who's going to follow all these global leaders? If everybody's a global leader,
Right,
then
right.
there's nobody left, really.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, we do want to, I mean, of course, every professor hopes that somebody that they're training will become some sort of world famous figure and then come back in 40 years and pat the professor on the back and say, "Oh, it all
Thanks a lot.
started your class." I think so many academics
Yeah.
feel like that kind of recognition is the ultimate payback.
Yeah.
But so yes, and at elite universities, and Yonsei would be one of them, we all want our students to be leaders and to do well. But yes, I do think that, I mean, competency at any level is important, whether it's global or local or a competency tied to a certain discipline. I somewhat raise my eyebrows at the whole notion of global competencies.
Why?
Because I ask, really, how do you measure that? And, you know, how extensively traveled or networked or versed in multiple cultures do you really have to be globally competent? Does that mean you have to have skills in 3 or 4 languages? You know, say like your classic stereotype of a contemporary Dutch citizen who can speak, you know, Dutch, French, English, and German, maybe a little bit of Flemish dialect or Spanish thrown in. You know, global competencies can very quickly end up being litmus tests.
Yeah.
In which, you know, we put these expectations on students that may or may not be realistic.
Interesting.
And or they end up just getting watered down to sort of
A
amorphous
list of,
cliches
Yeah.
that also don't necessarily have any meaning. But yes, I mean, I can certainly think about, in general terms, not necessarily global, but what kinds of competencies I want the next generation to have, or want my own children to have. And
Please.
you know, certainly I'd want them to have a sense of empathy for people
Sense of
around the
empathy.
world, and even people in their local communities that are worse off, thinking about how to improve conditions for people that are worse off than themselves. And that's, again, I guess those of us with the privilege to contemplate that in the first place are, you know, the ones that come up with these terms like global competency. But yes, thinking about it from the standpoint of improving life chances or improving the possibility for people to fulfill their inherent capabilities.
Right.
That's something that's important. Also for people to develop certain quantitative and technological skills, scientific reasoning skills, have a basic understanding of how scientific inquiry works, you know, social science as well as the natural science, basic competency reading and thinking and listening, you know, able to comprehend, able to take a complicated paragraph and then digest its key meaning, boil down something complicated into something that amounts to a simple essence. You take a long, complicated essay and figure out what the main point is very quickly.
Right.
You know, and be able to do that in a way and explain it to somebody maybe from a different cultural background. Explain one set of cultural norms to somebody from a completely different cultural background, even if it seems a little bit complicated. I would say an important global competency in the social media age is also being able to have a phone conversation and talk out loud to somebody. These days with the internet, and Sherry Turkle at MIT has kind of blazed a trail on this, that conversation takes a back seat. You know, millennial kids can't do job interviews as well as they should in many cases because they're so used to texting and emailing. People can hide behind their screens very quickly.